Every school day, millions of U.S. children enjoy a healthy, low-cost, or free lunch through the National School Lunch Program, a program that was first established in 1946 under the National School Lunch Act. This program is the largest federal child nutrition program, serving more than 30 million children every single school day. And it is a critical role in ensuring that all students, regardless of income, receive a nutritious meal that meets their growth and development needs. However, like most federal programs, it is not free from scrutiny. From questions about the healthfulness of meals, to worries about food waste, to issues like making sure that every kid gets the same meal, regardless of their ability to pay, there is much to learn, discuss, and better understand about this vital program. And that's why we're so grateful that 3 professionals from our food community are here today to share what they know about not only feeding the kids in our community, but also feeding them healthy, nutritious food that nourishes their body and does so in a way that's equitable and fair. Would you please join me in welcoming Greg Gefroh from Fargo Public Schools, Dana Reith from West Fargo Public Schools, and Kara Gloe, Moorhead School Board member and co-organizer of the PB&J School Lunch Fundraiser.
Good morning. 5 minutes goes by fast, so I'm going to give you a brief view of Greg Gefroh, the executive chef at UND, and how I got to Fargo Public Schools. Way back when, we'll go way back when. So I started cooking when I was 14, so I've been in the food service industry for roughly 40 years. I've worked at senior meals, I've worked at University of North Dakota for 15 years. My mom and dad owned a restaurant when I was growing up, so I kind of grew up in the restaurant industry. And about 8-9 months ago, I was driving by this place on my way home from work one night. So give you a little more background. I've always lived in Fargo, and I drove back and forth to UND for 15 years. So roughly $5,000 a year in gas, and 600 hours of my life I got back since I did that, and I've actually improved my golf game to go along with that. So I kept driving by this building, and I go, you know, that would be just a cool building to work in, because I think it just seems like it's very nice. And then all of a sudden, I was on Indeed one day, and up popped operations manager for Fargo Public Schools, and I'm like, looked at the job description and applied. And of course, for those of you who know me or those of you who don't know me, I knew I had the job as soon as I applied, because I'm a very confident person. And walked into the interview, and there was like 6-8 people in the interview, and pretty sure that I nailed it and left there. And Cindy, my boss, who I thank her for giving me the time away from work today to do this, her and I had some conversations after that, and her biggest concern with me was, and she stated this very publicly, Greg, you're not going to be an executive chef anymore. You're going to be behind the scenes feeding children school lunch. And I'm like, you know, I'm okay with that. And I have 4 grandchildren myself, and 3 of them are in Catholic schools, and I hope there's no one from that group here, but they don't really love the food there. And I'm like, okay, so how do I, as an executive chef, go to Fargo Public Schools and help improve the food? Okay, so my basic role, in a nutshell, is I order all the food for the elementary schools. I take care of all the equipment. I help with all the staffing. I order some food for the high schools and the middle schools, and I help them with recipe development and recipe creation. That's kind of my forte. During my 15 years at UND, that's basically what I did. I developed recipes, taught them to the staff, and taught them first speed scratch and then scratch. What I find interesting about the school lunch program is that there is a lot of good food out there already. Does it need some improving? Yes. Do we serve salsa and hummus and those kinds of things? No. Should we? Yes. I think our children deserve to try hummus, to try watermelon salsa, black bean salsa. I was at a national convention not too long ago. Spaghetti taco was a hot topic, where they put spaghetti with spaghetti sauce and put it in a taco. Very cool. A lot of schools are going with that ethnic flair. They're doing beef bulgogi, they're doing Asian food, they're doing stir fry to order. And we're just starting into all that. Again, I tend to push the envelope because my culinary background, I've worked, when I worked at UND, I worked with students from basically all across the world. China, 1 minute, are you kidding me? Okay, we gotta make this quick. So basically the students would approach me and they'd say, I want you to make beef bulgogi because my mom would make it for me. And I would say, okay, you come in the kitchen, you make it for me. And then a week later, I will make it for you. And if we can agree upon that, then we will put that on the menu. So how do you get your staff from speed scratch, okay, to all of a sudden doing things from scratch, okay? You don't, at UND, when I first started there, 75% of all the food we made came from a can or a boil in a bag. And I affectionately called my cooks cookie cutter chefs, because all they did is cut bags open, pour it in a pan. 15 years later, when I left, 75% of everything we made there, we did from scratch. We made all our soups from scratch, all our taco meat from scratch. But you have to have a culinary school or two to get that background, to get those students from, and those cooks from, that can teach you, so you can teach your cooks. I guess I'm done. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Hanson-Rieth with West Fargo Public Schools. Most of us have a memory of school lunch as a child. Some of those memories may or may not be positive, but regardless, what I can tell you is a lot has changed since then. School meals are a source of nutritious food for our kids, but cafeterias nowadays are actually an extension of the classroom. We are trying to teach in our cafeterias just like they're trying to teach in classrooms. And with the hundreds and sometimes thousands of students that we feed, in a lot of communities, we are actually the largest restaurant in town. So when you can kind of put those numbers together, you can see the impact that we're making on the students that we are feeding in our school cafeterias. So of course school meals are an important source of nutrition for our kids. Sometimes it's the only access to healthy food for some students. It may be the only access to a hot meal for some students. But for all students, it's an opportunity to help build healthy eating habits that can last a lifetime. So regardless of their background or their income level, we are teaching and providing students of all abilities and economic backgrounds the opportunity to build those healthy eating habits by modeling what is important to include in your meals and showcasing those in our school meals. We're constantly introducing new foods to our students, and so when you think about, did you like spinach or squash the first time you tasted it as a child? You maybe didn't. And so sometimes it takes up to 10 times of introducing or showing that food to a student before they like it, or maybe even before they even will taste it. So we're really putting a conscious effort of having variety out and trying things repeatedly, because we know that we can help develop those tastes for kids as well. But because of school meal requirements, of course we're very governed by federal guidelines and have some strict menu requirements and meal planning requirements. And because of that, sometimes things like the portion sizes that we are required to give, or maybe the amount of food that we are required to make sure is on a student's tray to be a reimbursable meal, that can lead to food waste. And we know that's an issue, and we know that it is something that we are concerned about, the community is concerned about, families are concerned about. And so we're always trying to look for ways to tackle that and make improvements in our school cafeterias. So we're really focused on that. And some of the strategies that we're taking, it might seem obvious, but to improve the quality of the food. So we know that if food tastes better, you're more likely to eat it and consume it and not waste it. So we are spending a lot of time making sure that we're selecting products that are the best possible food product that we can buy. We sample them, we taste them, we try them against other brands. We are really, really focused on selecting those good quality and trying them with our kids and making sure that they taste good. Recipe development, like Greg was saying too, is a big part of our job. We are trying to introduce more scratch cooking and speed scratch cooking. So we also spend a lot of time sampling recipes and trying foods with our students and trying to introduce new things that are trendy, things that will keep our kids coming to eat in our cafeterias and hopefully eat and consume the food that we're offering. We do taste tests with our students, so we try to do a lot of those right in the cafeteria. Share tables are another great way to make sure that we have a way to minimize waste where students can put food that they haven't consumed there, and then donating to food recovery programs as well are some of the ways that we're trying to reduce waste. All right, Kara?
Okay, I'm going to take things in an entirely different direction. My name is Kara Gloe, and I believe that every student deserves a hot, healthy lunch at school. Full stop. So, I don't know if you know this, but in the past, when a student's family could not afford to pay for school lunch, they were served a cold sandwich. The kind of cold sandwich that lets everyone around them know my parents can't pay for school lunch. So luckily, we've made some changes at the federal level to address this. In May of 2017, USDA released some new recommendations that require schools to feed every student the same hot lunch, but also requires schools to have a debt collection policy that would allow students to sell overdue lunch, allow the school to sell overdue lunch debt to debt collectors. So at that time, Moorhead area public schools had been serving every kiddo a hot meal regardless for some time. So the only change that they needed to make was to adopt that debt collection policy. So I'm sure that you can see the good intentions of these recommendations. As we have already cleared, every student does deserve a hot meal. And there's research that says well-fed kids do better on tests. I'm sure you will be shocked to hear that when kids are not distracted by the ache in their belly, they are much more able to concentrate at school. So that part of the recommendation I really appreciated, even though Moorhead was already doing that. The debt collection piece made me feel really yucky. So at the time, I was complaining to a friend, as you do, and she suggested, or she encouraged me to put on a school lunch fundraiser. It'll feed your soul. And my initial reaction was, yeah, I don't know anything about fundraising. But the idea sort of bounced around in my head for a while, and a few things crystallized, and I decided to do it. So after I nailed down a date and a location, I had lunch with my friend Heather Niesmeyer. Yeah, I told her about my idea and asked her to help. And actually, I don't even know if I actually asked her to help or if I just told her I was gonna need help and then she started doing the things, because that's the kind of human that she is. So anyway, PB&J School Lunch Fundraiser started in 2017. It's been held at Junkyard Brewing Company for the last 3 years. We serve a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a carton of milk for a free will donation. Chances to win donated items are sold. Portion of beer sales from Junkyard, food sales from Pico Taco Truck, and Spud Spiritware from Ellen Hopkins PTAC are donated. And then we donate all of that money to Moorhead Area Public Schools to pay off some of the overdue lunch accounts. So in the first year, Heather and I planned and executed PB&J School Lunch Fundraiser in 3 weeks. Not an ideal time frame. But we had some volunteers community volunteers on the day of the event, and we raised just under $4,000. The second year, we gave ourselves a little bit more time. We had more community support in the earlier stages of planning, and we raised over $7,000. This year, I had to take a step back from planning and organizing for personal reasons, so Heather and Dana Bizignani took the lead on that, and were supported by the Democratic Socialists of America Socialist Feminist Working Group. And they really stepped up the planning and were able to raise over $8,000 this year. But in addition to that $8,000, we have an anonymous donor who has pledged to match up to $10,000. So this year's PB&J has the potential to raise $20,000 for overdue school lunch debt in Moorhead. So this is really great for you all in the audience because you still have the opportunity to help us make that match. So you can go to FM Area Foundation, search for PB&J School Lunch Fundraiser. You can donate there. And if you have any questions, also, Heather has these in her hand and maybe on the table. So this is where you can find the exact donation location. Or if you have any questions, you can get a hold of Heather, Dana, or me at pbjfundraiser@gmail.com.
All right. So thank you all so much for sharing all your insights and perspectives on the National School Lunch Program. Lots of information. And now is the portion of our program where we get to ask them questions. So this is an opportunity to dive into something that they might have just kind of glanced over a little bit that you want to hear more about, or if you have an idea or a story or experience that you've had with school lunch that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. So if you raise your hand, I will go ahead and call on you. Deb Haugen.
So, North Dakota Public Schools was given a wonderful accolade because they have the highest percentage of schools that have salad bars in their public school lunches. Moorhead, I know, also has salad bars, and so what do you attribute that success to, and can you give examples of what you do that make your salad bars successful?
Salad bar success stories.
Yeah. Well, you know, when the new school lunch regulations came out in 2012, they required vegetable subgroups to be part of the meal planning requirements in a week. And so I think it was a natural fit for schools who maybe didn't already have a salad bar that would be the perfect time to try that.
Can you explain vegetable subgroups for those who might not speak that language?
Yeah, sure. So in school nutrition, it is by color. But we all know that there's different nutrients in different color vegetables. So for instance, we have to serve dark green vegetables every week, a bean or a legume every week, red orange vegetables, starchy vegetables, things like that. By doing a salad bar, it is a way to showcase some different offerings. And so I think the more things that we have that are self-service for our kids, like salad bar style, is a way to introduce a lot of variety and let them choose what they want to try and pick their own portion size. So I think that's probably why salad bars have been very well received.
Do you notice that waste is, do you have as much waste? Like, are they taking too much from the salad bars, or is that opportunity to choose help to kind of address some of the vegetable waste issues?
Yeah, it's definitely helped decrease the waste if you do offer versus serve, which is another school lunch term. But basically, we have to plan a menu and offer all the right components, but then a student can select 3 items to make it a reimbursable meal. So even though we may have a full rainbow of a salad bar out there, there's no requirement that a student takes everything, but they do have to have a half a cup of fruit or vegetable, and by having numerous choices out, they're more likely to find something that they're willing to try or something that they like.
I want to ask a question kind of related to that, because We know through the research that so much of learning to like a new food is that repeated exposure, seeing and trying it over and over again. And the school lunch program is a huge opportunity to expose lots of kids to new fruits and vegetables and new healthy foods. But in combination with that opportunity to try is also the waste issue. And so I hope that both of you could just talk a little bit about some of the strategies that you're using in Fargo, and if you're aware of any that Moorhead is using too. But just to hear about what you're doing, because we know that that's something that's top of mind when you're thinking about school lunch.
Sure. Well, I guess one way with the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, it's a grant that we can apply for our elementary and middle schools. And that is a grant that provides us with funds to serve a fresh fruit or vegetable snack in a taste test size portion. The grant is very well paying in the fact that we can afford to serve some kind of unique seasonal kind of things and try to really introduce kids to something. So we use that program a lot to try to show them something new or different.
I think along with that too, the program allows you to buy certain food processing equipment. So if you want to buy like whole watermelons or cases of cucumbers rather than buy individual packets of it, then you can purchase those processing equipment, and then it brings your costs of serving that product down.
So that equipment is available through the grant as well?
I believe it is, yes. I know Dana just purchased a food processing unit for her school, and we just got ours not too long ago. We're just kind of getting into it, but I've used those units before at different locations, and I know Dana and I were having a conversation here, and this was a few months ago, where let's say you can buy a case of cucumbers for $20. Well, if you buy prepackaged cucumbers, to buy that same amount of 20 pounds, it would probably cost you 6-7 times that amount. It would cost you, so to have the ability to process that food in-house, and as long as your staff has the training, it really helps keep your costs down.
Wonderful, thank you. Abby?
I have a question about the regulation that was passed about the collection agencies. Was that is it a requirement that school districts sell their debt, or was that an allowance by the federal government?
Yeah, is the question's related to, are they mandated to sell the debt, or is it just giving them that option?
So that's one of the things that I don't fully understand myself, because it's a recommendation. But I think that my understanding is that if you aren't following the recommendations, you are at risk of losing your USDA funding. So the recommendation,
it's a requirement.
Right, the recommendation was that every school have a policy.
Okay.
And so I know that when Moorhead School Board passed that policy, that was, before I was on, our superintendent assured the board at the time that he would only use that as a last case scenario, because he recognizes that that is not a way to build relationships with families. And so I think, I check this, I think every year right around PB&J. To date, Moorhead Area Public Schools has not sent any overdue lunch accounts to collections.
In the center?
Related question, I guess, do we know if Fargo Public Schools or West Fargo Public Schools has actually sent any lunch debts to collections? And a related question, I'm kind of hearing a contradiction between this emphasis on food waste and trying to eliminate food waste when we have $26,000 worth of kids that are not able to eat at school or incurring debt because of the food. So it seems like there's sort of a discrepancy between we're trying to cut down on food waste when there are kids that aren't even able to afford. So we're throwing away food that we've already paid for, and then kids are having to pay for it on the back end. So I'd like to know if any schools have actually collected this, and I also know that sending it to social services is in the policy, so they can send it to the county. Not for Moorhead, but for Fargo Public Schools. Where they can send it to the county and have social services check on you as like your parent, you're not taking care of your kid. So do we know if those have happened today?
West Fargo Schools has not sent any to collections. We do have quite a few donors who help out. and have been able to help us through those situations. We also work closely with our school social workers, and so we try to get families to apply for free and reduced programs. They may actually qualify and might just not want to do the paperwork or feel a little too proud to do the paperwork. But those programs are out there for a reason. And so if they can apply through that program, that is what we definitely want to encourage them to do. I guess to the other part of your question, it's important to remember school lunch programs are self-operating. And most districts do not want to use their general fund money to help with school lunch programs. But one requirement also is that school lunch programs can't use their operating balance to cover bad debt. So we do count on things like fundraisers or donations to help for those debts that incur.
Greg, do you have any comments?
So 40% of all the food, any restaurant, college and university, any Sanford hospital, 40% of what they buy actually ends up in the garbage. So think about that as a whole, and some of that can't be eliminated. Okay, there's certain policies and procedures in place that we have to use that we can't take that food and serve it to the children the next day. Now that being said though, I know there was a pilot program in Minnesota not too long ago where there was a group of gentlemen that were going around to schools and collecting food and then repurposing it. And I'm not sure of all the regulations and what all goes along with that. But I can tell you from my history working at Senior Meals years ago, we used to take all our leftover food at Senior Meals and Services, and those little foil 3-compartment trays, we would put mashed potatoes in one and meatball in another and a vegetable in the other, and then we would freeze that. And then on holidays when the senior center wasn't open, then we would offer those frozen meals to the seniors. Okay, so why are we not doing that to students to take home on weekends? It's their food anyway, they bought it. So how do we start a program like that? Well, it takes number one myself to say, okay, we need to do this. How do we do it? How do we do it? How do we do it professionally and cleanly so that we're not poisoning anyone? Because I know right on my door in my office, there's 2 sayings that the gentleman that worked there for 40 years, while I got to intern with him for 6 weeks, told me, and he said, if you do this every day, you'll be successful. And he was there for 40 years. And the first one is feed the children. And the second one is don't make them sick.
Words to live by.
So do we know if Fargo Public Schools has collected on lunch debt?
I'm not well versed in that. I couldn't speak to that with any accuracy.
With regards to some of those ways to address the debt issue, I know that Fargo Public Schools did pilot a program with Madison Elementary that the entire school was enrolled in, that every student received a free and reduced or free lunch. Is that accurate?
I believe that is accurate, yes.
And so instead of having every individual family apply for the program, the entire school, based on the income of the community, was able to qualify, and the whole school received free lunch.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, which is an interesting way to think about some of those issues too. Bjorn. Is that Bjorn?
Yep, that's
Okay,
good.
there's a little big glare here.
No, how many of the area schools, what percentage have their own kitchens? Or do you have like a central kitchen that you use to then distribute meals out to the schools, or?
I can speak for Fargo Public, and Dana will speak for West Fargo. We have, in all our elementaries, they basically heat product and serve it. They don't do, they just have ovens. They don't have any like gas operations or combi ovens or anything like that. Anything that's hot, like a taco meat or a spaghetti sauce, comes from our central kitchen where we mass produce it and then we ship it out. Same with like ranch dressing and French dressing. Also, we have a bakery there that does a certain amount of baking quick breads and sends that product out. Our hope is that we can expand that further down the road, but I have to walk before I can run.
And we're very similar in West Fargo. We have a central kitchen where we produce any item that is made with a raw ground beef or a raw meat product. So things like our taco meat, spaghetti sauce, sloppy joes, those are made in Central Kitchen, and they're shipped hot and ready that morning to the schools. And then our secondary schools have more sophisticated equipment like combi ovens. Our elementaries are all have ovens and heating equipment. So they're getting kind of a combination of either food from Central Kitchen, depending on the menu, or if it's something like pizza on the menu, they can bake it right there in their own building.
Real quick, how many meals are served in each of your districts each day?
We serve about 9,000 lunches a day, about 3,000 breakfasts in West Fargo.
I think we're very similar. I think pretty close to those averages. Yeah.
Do you happen to know Moorheads?
Sorry, no.
Sorry. We have time for one more question. I am sorry. We'll go to Carson over there.
Carson Ouellette from Senator Tina Smith's office. The federal legislation on these issues was last reauthorized in 2010 and expired in 2015, so they've just been going by appropriations. And the Senate Ag Committee earlier this year had a hearing on childhood nutrition. If there were a bill to go in front of Congress to reauthorize these and make changes, are there some like major changes that you'd like to see the lawmakers really advocate for or change?
Go ahead.
More money?
I think the flexibilities that are there in our school meal planning now, such as not every grain has to be whole grain. I know some schools have found some success in keeping those flexibilities, and they would, want to continue with that. It just gives a little variety in that maybe like a whole grain biscuit or a soft shell taco that maybe the whole grain item was just not well received, and it gives them some flexibility. And then I would say the sodium requirements where they're at right now is doable, but in the original meal planning was for graduated steps of decreasing that sodium over the years, and that seems like it would be hard to meet that, and mostly because of our manufactured foods. Our food manufacturers have done tremendous work in making products that work for school nutrition programs, but if it went much lower on some of those sodium levels, it would really compromise the taste.
Does anyone else have thoughts on the reauthorization? All right.
So you're mostly talking about food preparation stuff, right? Not.
It's a broad debate, so
Okay, so I would really love to see the federal government just pay for all school lunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we could be done with fundraisers for that. There's, it's an important thing to fundraise for, but there are lots of other things that need our money too, so.
All right. So for those who are new to First Fridays, first thank you all for your questions, and it always goes so fast, so we know that there will be more. These guys will hang out for a bit after, so you can grab them and ask them your questions. But we always like to end First Fridays with a final question. What can we do to support school lunch, Fargo Schools, West Fargo, Moorhead Public Schools? How can this group in our audience today support what you're doing? Want to start us off, Kara?
Sure, you can donate to our fundraiser. Easy peasy. So again, Heather has these, which you can have the link and this little code thing. And then watch out for our next year's fundraiser, because they're a lot of fun actually. Come to our fundraiser, drink some beer, eat some PB&J, hang out. But otherwise, yeah, mostly for me it's just donations. Thanks.
We always appreciate community support in supporting school meals. So if you haven't eaten a school lunch for many years, I would invite you to go to your local school cafeteria, eat with your child or your grandchild, or come check it out, because I can guarantee you it is different than what you might remember from the past. So I invite you to eat school lunch.
And I want to speak to specifically the culinary students that are here today. I'm a former culinary student myself, and I think the future of high school, middle school, elementary school lunches is not far away from what colleges are serving now. Ready, made to eat, hoo-hot type food where students can come up and they can customize. Those things are not far off in our schools, and I think that's a good thing. I think the more choices that you can give students, whether they want to be a flexitarian, a vegetarian, or a meatitarian, however you want to call it, I think the more choices that you can give them and the more ability for them to have that food for free is just a plus for all of us.
Awesome. Would you all please join me in thanking our speakers today?